Hi, my name is Tom Conkle. I'm a cybersecurity engineer with Optic Cyber Solutions and want to take a few moments today to talk about how do we know if we're ready for CMMC certification. So today's video does expand on other videos that we've done in the past regarding CMMC and cyber maturity and helps us take those concepts that we've previously talked about just to understand what do we need to do to make sure that we're ready for that assessor to come and evaluate our program. So this process, we've identified 5 key questions that once we're able to successfully address and answer those questions, we know that we are ready for a certifier to come assess our organization to make sure that we can achieve the required CMMC level. So just jumping right in, the first place that we need to start is understanding what level of certification is required for our organization. So as we've previously talked about in other videos, there are 5 levels to CMMC, whereas the level of sensitivity of the data that you are required to protect helps determine what is the appropriate level that you need to be certified at. So for example, we can see here on the slide that if we have federal contract information, we need to be level 1, and then if we need to protect controlled unclassified information, we need to be level 3. As we talked about previously in the CMMC overview, level 2 is a transition step that just helps us understand priorities for how we move from level 1 to level 3, so organizations will not be certified at level 2. And level 4 and 5 still have not been scoped by DoD to understand the types of environments that will require 4 and 5 certification. So really we just need to understand, do we need to be a 1 or a 3, and that is determined on the type of data that we have. So once we know the sensitivity of the data that we have on whether we have controlled unclassified information or FCI, and we know what level of certification we need to get, the next thing we need to do is be able to identify where is that sensitive data in our environment. So do we understand the resources that are processing, transmitting, and storing that either FCI or CUI data? And this goes all the way to the technical process system as well as the staff resources that we have that will have access to it, right? Have they been identified and defined? Once we've identified what level we need to be certified at, we know where that sensitive data is in our environment, we need to implement the appropriate CMMC practices. So as we know from the previous video that if we need to be level 1, there are 17 practices that need to be put in place. If we need to be level 3, there are 130 practices that need to be defined and implemented as well in the organization. So for the example that you'll see here on the slide, right, this is a level 3 practice. So that means that we need to have the directive for this practice codified in policy. We need to have procedures for how we're making sure the practice is implemented. We need to have a plan that basically demonstrates that leadership commitment to providing resources and making sure the practice is going to be implemented. We know that it'll be maintained over time. All right, so then the next thing we need to do is just make sure that we understand the practice, right? Read through the practice, see the different components that need to be implemented within the practice, and then implement those capabilities. And fortunately for us, DoD has helped us with a little bit of guidance by providing an assessment guide. So the assessment guide is the guide that the assessors will use to come and evaluate your program. So this is something that if we know what they're going to come test us for, we can then build our cybersecurity capabilities to it. So strongly recommend that you review the assessment guide, know what they'll test, and then have those capabilities implemented so that we know that we're ready. So once we have implemented those practices, we also need to be able to communicate what we've implemented to the certifier. So when the assessor comes in, we're able to explain to them how we have met each of the practices. So we recommend starting with something such as a CMMC profile, especially if you're a level 1 organization. While you're not required to have policies or procedures in place, it's always helpful to have kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, of how have you implemented each of the practices, right, and the capabilities that you have in place. So that way when the assessor comes in, you're able to clearly articulate and demonstrate those capabilities when they're in place. If you are a level 3 organization, as you know, you're required to have a system security plan that fully documents the security capabilities within your organization for all 130 of the applicable security practices. So this one's pretty straightforward for level 3, whereas you know you're going to have a SSP to describe your cybersecurity program for the assessor to before the assessor comes to complete the assessment. So once we have a way of communicating our cybersecurity capabilities to the assessor, we need to make sure that we're prepared. So we may need to make sure that the privileged users, the system administrators, understand the policies if we're level 3, or the capabilities at level 1 that need to be implemented, how we're protecting that sensitive information. We also need to make sure that the users, the end users that are actually going to be processing and handling that data on a regular basis, they understand the capabilities and the expectation that's in place. It's not uncommon and highly expected that the assessor will want to talk to end users to understand from their perspective, do they know how to protect the data, where they can store it, and how they can access it. So with that, we have the 5 key questions that will help you understand that once you're able to successfully answer these, that you're ready for certification. And just as a quick refresher, we started by understanding what certification level we need to be, and then we defined where is that sensitive data in our environment. Once we understand where it is, we have to implement the practices, whether it's the 17 level 1 practices for protecting FCI or the 130 practices for protecting CUI. Once we've implemented the practices, we have to have a way of communicating or talking to our assessor so that we know how are we going to describe to them what capabilities we've put in place. And then we've also trained our staff, and our staff understand how we are protecting that sensitive information. Once we've achieved these 5 goals, we know we're ready to call a certifier and be successful in our certification. And as always with our videos, we want to make sure we provide some resources to help you get started, make sure that you're able to prepare for that certification. So at first we see some of the guidance that the DoD has provided for us, including the CMMC model and the assessment guides for both levels 1 and 3 that we talked about earlier. Also included a link here for the accreditation body of CMMC to help us understand the certification process. So as an organization seeking certification, you understand the steps that you need to take to go through the certification process. The AB also provides a marketplace for us so that we can either go and find a RPO or registered practitioner organization such as Optic that'll help you implement and prepare for certification, or when you're ready for certification to find that C3PAO or a CMMC third-party assessment organization that will actually perform the assessment. And then of course on the Optic website we have additional resources such as the profile template that we talked about for CMMC, just to help you get started in capturing your cybersecurity capabilities. Even if you're required to be level 3, the profile is a great place to start, to just generally start writing what your capabilities are as you evolve towards developing that system security plan. Again, my name is Tom Conkle, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Love to hear from you. Thank you.